I'm gonna resume recording. And like I said, we're okay. So we'll get started. Today we're just going to be, like I said, just chatting. Maybe take a half an hour or 40 minutes here or whatever. Certainly, if you guys have any questions or anything, please, as usual, unmute yourself and or throw it in chat. But just kind of talking about investor clients. So, in reality, we do this session and we actually broke it up to, working with, investor clients. And then just also if, kind of you yourself, we're potentially thinking about, buying investment properties. So it's kind of twofold and it really relates all the way through as we're chatting here. So I do have, it's really just going to be all slides, but, just chatting about it. But like I said, if you guys have anything, if anyone has any experience that they want to, bring, just mention, please do. Because, I know there's a lot of us that either are investors or have worked with clients in the past. So let's see if I can move forward here. So just some stats to get started. So, Redfin, one out of every four single family houses bought in the United States in 2023 were purchased by an investor. So like one out of four, and if we don't work with investors a lot and we sell the homes we do, just think about how many were sold, to an investor. And as we're talking here, sometimes properties that are sold, sort of to or by an investor, or sometimes off market too. An investor will reach out to another investor. They'll reach out to an agent and just go, "Hey, I got 10 properties I want to get rid of," and just spread the word. So, but kind of one out of four is every sale that's happened in the United States. We're an investor, and I'm not sure if you guys are seeing this where you are, but there are corporations now that are just buying real estate, single family, up to 30 units or whatever. But they are really spending a lot of money, buying investments, whether they're single family or larger. So it's just interesting to think one out of every four is just investor, which tells us, I don't know if you guys have an issue with rents, creeping up for the folks that maybe can't afford to buy or aren't ready. But in our markets, rents are creeping up, and it's kind of crazy. Like if there was a house available, or maybe they had, a better situation, like their mortgage would probably be a lot less than their rent. But the more and more properties that we're selling to investors, the more renters we're probably going to have to work with. So that's just an interesting stat. Bigger Pockets, 32 billion just in Q4 of 2023. So again, just kind of, putting it out there, and really the conversation today is really just us, realizing that, well, there are investors out there. There are probably a lot of investors out there, maybe some that, that I know, maybe I can, sort of have a different conversation. Maybe I can market myself a little different, put myself out there as, hey, I can help you as an investor, or, if you're just buying a single family home for yourself. So just kind of the thoughts as we go through here. And then I always just put, reread the above statement, just because, just how big those numbers are. One out of every four, and then 32 billion in one quarter. And then we'll kind of continue some stats or talk points as we go here. So, just investor purchases in general, you see from 2000 to, 2024, even though it dropped some Q1, just the sheer volume that investors bring to our market, can't stress enough, I just want to throw my hat in the ring and just get a chunk of that. If I'm working with investors now, great. But if I'm not, what can we do to kind of get familiar enough to make to make an investor want to work with you, because they're pretty particular with who they work with, or just want someone that knows what they're doing. um, or the fact is if you are working investors, who else is out there that I can help investor wise? So, average Joe. So that's just our manager in Cincinnati. He's been investing for 20 years. He is very passionate about it. That's just sort of the average Joe that I consider. Like, it's just a normal person, that started with one property and just continues to build and add to the portfolio as you can. And then the right, as I mentioned, corporate America. So, large corporations coming in and buying, dozen homes at a time. They'll talk to a builder and just buy all 30 houses and then just rent them all out. So definitely a difference between the two. Corporate America likely has their own folks in doing it. So we're kind of working or looking for the average Joe. And by the way, that average Joe can be like, hey, I'm going to buy one, or I have one property. Or the average Joe can be like, hey, I got 40 properties. I've just, I don't have, I didn't have $2 million to start this whole process. I just chipping away at it. And as I get one and get to a certain point, then I want another, and then I want another. So, the average Joe is more than just a one property and then done type thing. So why represent investors? So this is kind of where, we can sort of open our minds to, what can I do with an investor? And first one is they buy in good markets and bad markets. So, whether it's, they have cash or they're, still financing, it doesn't matter, they're if an investor is going to, has the, wants to grow, it's not going to matter, to them. It's, essentially all a numbers game. But good and bad markets, you're going to have someone that's ready, willing, and able to buy. So another big thing is they take the emotion out of it. So I'll actually bring this one up. It's just a numbers game. So, we'll kind of talk about some numbers. I'm not going to get too deep in that part of it, but really the idea is, I mean, I do have a couple investors that are kind of constantly looking. And if I know, I can look at a property and I can, I kind of know, they're not going to care. If the numbers make sense, the numbers make sense. So, they're not needing updated kitchen, or I don't like the layout, or the backyard's too small. It's like, hey, what can I get it for? What's it going to cost me a month, and how much rent can I get? And if it's a plus if the difference is a plus, they're interested. So just kind of some thoughts to, us working with just a buyer, and, we show them, 10 houses or whatever, and they haven't found the right one. Investor, if the numbers make sense, it makes that process a lot easier. So and I'm sure you guys know this, so I'm going to kind of just bring this up. Residential versus commercial. But if there is anyone, sort of newer to the process, residential units considered 1 to 4 units. So anything from a single family to an apartment building, and I say that, but with 4 units, so duplexes, things like that. Pros: easier to buy and sell, easier to finance, easier to manage. A con, which is a negative, is fewer doors. So if I buy one single family or 1 4-unit, I have 1 to 4 units. So, even though I might be able to move it quicker, like I said, finance it, manage it, it's fewer doors, so it's less rent. So commercial, 5+ units. So, whether it's a 5-unit or a 40-unit, just, more cash coming in the door. But as you know, as you can look at the residential cons and pros, this one's going to be harder to finance, harder to sell, and harder to manage. So, if this is you doing it, if this is your investor, potentially purchasing a commercial property, you or they are just going to want to have, potentially a manager, property manager involved. You may need more cash to put down or cash to purchase, things like that. So, but, there's nothing negative about each one. It's just a matter of, again, whether it's you or your investor client, what are they looking for? If anyone is just starting out, certainly would think that a 1-to-4 unit makes more sense so that you can get your footing on, what a month looks like. If you got a duplex, what does that month look like? What does the first 3 months look like? Managing it and dealing with it and all of that versus, hopping right into a 20 unit and in being new to the process. So, typically you'll see them, someone start out in, in a single or duplex type situation. But just a quick little synopsis of residential versus commercial. So, I just kind of did this as a single family. So, if you see a single family and it is 150,000 or, easy numbers, 100 grand. So 100 grand for a single family. Are you going to, or your investor going to finance it? So obviously, hey, how much am I putting down? What's the mortgage going to be? So I know for a single family, I'm only getting one number. I'm only getting $1,500 a month, whatever that number is. So, so it starts with, well, what's it going to cost me each month? And then I know I'm getting the 1,500. So principal and interest, obviously, if you finance it, property taxes, insurance, and so that's PITI, so principal, interest, property taxes, and insurance. And then just really, property management fee, HOA fee, you almost need to sort of add a sixth, but it's sort of an unknown, is, sort of a, hey, what could happen today? If it's vacant, so you got to kind of have a vacancy rate or, just a general expense rate. Maybe you pay utilities is included in the rent. So again, there could be some more, but in general, it's the first three that you start with. And then certainly if there's any other fees that are going to happen. But, principal and interest, hey, that's going to be $500. Property taxes are going to be $300. Insurance is $200 a month. That's $1,000. If there are no other set fees, you're in good shape because you're going to have that 1,500. So at least initially, it makes sense. But you always want to look at look for yourself or think, have your investor make sure they know what potentially could happen. So that 500 extra, maybe that goes into in an account, and then at the end of the year you got $6,000 if something happens, if an unknown expense comes up, if obviously we gotta, we think about if the property is vacant for 2 months, well, guess what, we're not getting that 1,500, and the principal in interest of the mortgage, the property taxes, and the insurance are still due. So where does that money come from? So it's all just kind of part of, the thought process in analyzing a purchase. So anytime, you talk to an investor, if they've done this, they've got it down. They will literally just run some numbers quick and, and throw a number at you. Offer 90, the numbers make sense, I'll do it, that type of thing. But anyone new that you might come across or that might be interested in starting this investment process, these are kind of the basics that they would need to know. So just that Brett Whistle amortization. So it's really just a great app that will help you run an amortization. So if you're wondering like, hey, the mortgage is 90 grand, Here's the interest rate. It'll literally tell you, of course, what the payment is, but it breaks it down. If you choose to do a 10-year mortgage or a 20-year mortgage, exactly what your balance will be at at the end of the 15th year type thing. So brettwissel.net. So just a great kind of a financial website. Our title folks are Chicago ones, so that's always a good piece for kind of making sure that you guys are, that your investors, sort of ready for that. And then Bigger Pockets is another great website, kind of investment wise, I should say. So the brettwissel.net and the biggerpockets.com are great websites to just take a minute, check them out. Articles that you can read to help better yourself. And that's kind of part of this process to, better yourself to be prepared to work with investors, and the same with biggerpockets.com. In sort of running those, if you go to the Brett Wissel, if you're just in whether your banker, if you got a relationship with them, could run these numbers, but doing it yourself a lot, or the investor doing it, just sort of allows you to do it on your time frame. But just things to consider: the mortgage rate. Sometimes if it's not a primary house, the interest rate might be a little more. But then the length of the loan. So is it a 15, 20, 30, and then how much you put down? So some things to kind of consider, like you can go to the website and say, we're going to borrow 100 grand. The interest rate is 6%. I'm putting 20% down for 15 years. Okay. $100,000 mortgage, 6% for 20 years, just kind of play with that. And sometimes you'll be able to, say, okay, so if I do a 20-year mortgage, the numbers really make sense. It gives me a little cushion. If I do a 15-year mortgage, it's going to be a little bit tighter, but I pay it off quicker, things like that. So those are all things that investors will definitely look at in the idea of how long do they hold it, so that it pays for itself. That's the main thing they're going to be looking at. So property taxes, just some ideas here. Like always go to the public auditor's website, or do do your own calculation. Actually, it's so tricky to be able to these numbers have to be 100%. If you're I don't trust a I don't trust a an agent sometimes to have the property taxes right. And my investor is banking on an exact number so that the numbers make sense. And if that, obviously, if really anything we sell, if the property taxes are $200 higher a month or whatever number, that's going to have a big issue on the investor's bottom line. In that, so it's just part of us verifying this information, and don't trust, third-party sites and things like that. I always say, if you have to, call the assessor's office in the town where the property is, and get whatever you need to get the exact numbers. Obviously every buyer or every homeowner, it's important, but these investors, again, are very particular and need those numbers to make sense, because they can be upside down pretty quick if we have any numbers incorrect. School districts. So again, there's a lot that goes into that property, and we know it because we deal with that when we list a property. But just knowing the investment properties are just a hair different, with the end result needing to be a profit. So insurance, just encourage you or your folks to shop insurance. It's kind of crazy. My investors, have a guy, but every time they buy another one, they're willing to shop it, because it can just be, it can be such an easy $100 a month cheaper, or just $50 a month cheaper, with the same coverage kind of thing. So just kind of, encourage them to shop insurance and not just assume, one place is the best. Umbrella insurance, renter's insurance, just a couple different policies to help, cover the investor. And then just an example, a single family rental that costs 569 and then a duplex that's 661. And, and those are for this case, those are with two different insurance companies. And the 569 makes sense and the 661 makes sense. But if I had them with both, it's likely that, both with the same insurance company, it's likely that, that 661 probably would have been 850. So, so again, don't be afraid to shop to save, 25, $30 a month, whatever that number is. And just know that your investors with anything we can give them. Just remember that, anything we have, like, oh, you got to shop insurance. Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Anything we can give them is a value prop to show, hey, we can be a great asset for you in your first investment property, and as you go, your 10th in more. So just an example here. So this is actually an example in Cincinnati with the picture I showed you of Dan, our manager. So he sent me this and I just added it. So just expenses, purchased it for 80, put 20 down, $16,000 down. Mortgage will be 64. The interest rate at the time he purchased it, probably not now, 4.75. 30-year fixed is what he chose to do. So total monthly payment and principal of interest, $333.85. So that's kind of the start of, hey, here's a property, we're going to rent it. What's that initial one? Principal and interest in the mortgage. So second page of this, principal and interest. So property taxes, $60 a month. So we're at about $400 a month right now in expenses. Insurance, $1,580 a month. HOA, $200 a month. Property management, $63 a month. Total expenses, $672.78, and rent is $1,050. So each month, this property is scheduled to make the investor $377.22. So that's just kind of a quick synopsis, what we talked about. How much is it? How much we putting down? What's the mortgage look like? What do the expenses look like? So on the best month possible, no issues, no, the place is actually rented, we're going to make $377.22. And then, obviously you can do the math, 30, almost $4,500 for the year. So, so some things with multifamilies. So cap rate, and I can send you guys this spreadsheet or this PowerPoint so that you guys can have it and share it or just use it. So I'm not going to get too deep with these, but just kind of know, cap rate, really just the return on a commercial property. And I put in there commercial property, but in reality, it's a 2-family and up. So the cap rate is very important to an investor, whether it's a 2-family or a 40 unit, but it's really just, how much money the property is going to get. So cash on cash. So, how much cash returned for cash on cash invested. So same kind of thing, if I'm going to put in 20 grand, what am I getting back? And then gross rent multiplier. So it just shows the amount of time it takes gross annual income to pay for a property, plain and simple. Like what, is it going to take me 5 years to pay this off, or is it going to take me 20? And an investor is not going to, I don't want to say they're not going to care. Like, it doesn't have to be 5, it doesn't have to be 10, but if it's 20, it just needs to make sense with them. So, so those are all just kind of, calculations that are important to an investor. So if we just kind of know them and know the basics behind them, it'll make sense when we're kind of having that conversation with the investor. So, again, kind of thinking now, really vacancy rate matters whether we have a single family or more, but the idea of vacancy rate. So again, we know if a property is vacant and for how long, that is money off our bottom line. So if we were going to make 377.22 on that unit and it was vacant for 1 month, we're going to lose the difference, $630 a month. So again, just kind of knowing, vacancy rate. Commercial properties come with more expenses than residential properties. So property management, obviously, if you have a 40 unit, is the investor really doing it themselves? So property management comes into play. Maintenance, larger buildings, whether it's 2 or 40 unit, just gonna, two different families living in it, 40 different families living in it, just the general wear and tear. Minimum doubles obviously could go a lot more if it's a larger unit. Common area maintenance, typically, we would see that in a 5 unit or higher, where you walk in and you gotta, you have the entryway and then the doors go off of it. So common area maintenance and expenses, utilities are part of that. And then, landscaping, snow removal could be an expense depending on any unit, single family or up. But typically in larger units, you're going to have someone helping you do that. And then contracted work, so just general maintenance, whether the property management does that, if they're taking care of the property as well, then that's going to be more expensive. Or if you just have a property manager, typically you're going to have someone, you might have a general maintenance guy just on site or available at any point, because in 40 units, you got to realize, more could potentially go wrong. So, so when we talk about valuations, it's really just the investor that has to think about, do they want to, finance? Do you have the cash to do it? Each one is different. Do you put 20 grand down, or keep the 20 grand and only put 5 grand down? Really the cash idea, or the return on investment. As I said earlier, every investor is different. We just need to know the general terminology, that, in sort of, we don't have to necessarily lead them, but it's really just a matter of understanding how they want to do it. How much money do they have, if they're financing, kind of all of that. And then, when we see a property, that's when we can take advantage of it. Oh, Jim, this 100 grand property, he'd probably pay cash for it. Or, hey, this, he doesn't want 2 units, he only wants 4 and above. Whatever we can do to sort of better understand what they're looking for, including valuations in things where, we kind of know, what calculations they're going to do. So that's a big piece. So if we understand that they're going to look at, a very quick, what's the purchase price, bam, 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 or, or they're going to play around with, how long the mortgage is. So how big is that payment? And I don't mind if it's, if I have it 20 years before it's paid for itself. But, some investors are very clear, like, if it doesn't pay for itself in 5 years, I'm not interested. And it's just a matter of us having that conversation with them so that we can understand them. And if you have not worked with investment, and maybe some of these terms are sort of newer to you, it's really just a matter of, just being familiar with it. And the first person you work with, you're going to learn a little bit more, and then, continue to learn, some terminology. But it's really just understanding each investor, and don't assume, because it's not true, that, you're working with Jim does it this way, that if you meet, Sue, don't say like, oh, Sue, this is a great property for you, because she may, she may calculate and value things differently and have a different mindset on how she wants to invest. So just some ideas behind that. So, it's just, I'm gonna kind of throw all them up there. So, so those are four different sort of calculations on, return and length of holding before it's paid for, things like that. So again, I'm going to send you guys these slides so you have them. I'll send them to Ashley. So real quick, just, kind of if you had they may have, so I actually just listed some apartment buildings. They were a two, and a three. And, an agent brought a client, and it, it, it was very clear that this investor has done this before. He, verified the rents and whatever expenses might exist, and in probably 2 hours he had numbers that he'd be willing to pay. So he had, and I'm just saying that is because this is sort of a spreadsheet that an investor may have, literally just plugging in, what's the purchase price, rents, and in some cases, PI, so they're financing things like that. And it really just comes down to, a certain number, and how long is it going to take me to to pay that off. So, and then just in the lower right you'll see, and I think I can get this spreadsheet if you want, because I think this might be one of Dan's. So if you're interested, let me know. But it really comes down to, so when we talked about the cap rate, kind of, it helps you value a property. So with this net operating income based on, really, I mean, it's very simple. It's a 6-unit. Here's the list price. They're going to finance it. It comes down to an end number. Multiply that by, 12, comes up with gross, some expenses. Well, here's the cap rate. So if you insist on some investors will insist on a cap rate, and it helps value the property. So at a 6% cap rate, the property's worth $425, and it's listed at $375. So, but if you want a higher cap rate, the property's worth, $283 at 9%. So again, it just helps, the investor kind of figure out, obviously their bottom line and in what they're going to end up with after a certain period of time. But it's kind of cool when you really start doing this once or twice, and the numbers. I'm kind of a numbers guy, so it kind of ends up being a little fun when it gets down to it. But just some ideas behind valuing properties. And there's just another one that I won't go through, but it's a similar spreadsheet. Someone with something like this, can sort of come up with an offer or a value, or say yes or no pretty quick, because they understand what they're looking for, and plug in some numbers, and it's ready to go. So just let's bring these all up so we can just chat about all of them. But sorry. So probably the one thing on here that stands out the most is the net operating income. So kind of figuring that out, and then just an investor will, even though I say they take the emotion out of it, they're going to be very particular about the roof, the electrical, the mechanics, because that they just know, like, hey, if the property's vacant for a month, I can deal with it. If I need to spend $200 on a fix for something, I can deal with it. But if I need a roof, if the furnace goes, things like that, obviously, as you would would consider any homeowner being, considering that important. But, strictly talking numbers, so this capital improvements, which, is a major expense, they're always very particular about. So you'll usually see an investor spending more time, or maybe even an inspection of sorts on just just the capital improvement type pieces, heating, air, roof, things like that, windows, things that, aren't a quick $200 fix if needed. So just some things, again, if you've done this, you're pretty familiar, but even me with just working with an investor every once in a while, it's always good to really think about these. But security deposits are super important to make sure, whether the buyer needs to, sort of have that money transfer to them, because obviously if it's not in the contract, the buyer could, not get those security deposits, and then a seller or a tenant moves out and they have to pay them, literally pay it themselves. So just kind of making sure your investor is covered. All rents are prorated at closing date. So where to find investors? I'm gonna just throw these up. Just some ideas. Just if you have one, great. But ask them, hey, do you have anyone else? But other ideas, Facebook groups. Scroll around on social. See what's out there. So REIAs, real estate and investment associations. I know I didn't know it, but I know there's actually one in where I live. So, whether it's a matter of, just going to the meetings, meeting some folks, kind of throwing your hat into the ring like that, networking events. The one that sort of stands out to me is really your SOI. So that's your sphere of influence, like people, like, just have conversations with them about potentially investing, or, hey, are you an investor? And I didn't even know, can I help you find some properties? So I kind of want, this whole conversation to relate back to investors buy in good markets and bad markets. And investors spent $32 billion in a quarter in 2023. Again, I want a chunk of that. So, sort of, definitely thinking along those lines.
Hey, Wayne.
Yes.
On what to include in a contract, was there something more than just security deposits, or?
Well, it's prorated rent.
Okay.
The contract's going to be the same, how much you're paying, but it's just it's the additional pieces that matter when you're, buying or selling an investment property. So it's really the thought of security deposits and prorating rent, additional things, which it's actually part of my contracts. So maybe it's part of yours, is, really just having all the info on the tenants. So, do they have a lease? When's the lease end? Part of it is, how much rent do they have? How much rent do they pay? Do they have a lease? When does it expire? Does it renew automatic? So, so there's more than just the deposits and rent, but that deposit and the rent is really just a larger chunk. It's just a chunk of money. So that's kind of why I bring that up, sort of relating to, you buy a 4-unit apartment building, each rent is $1,000. There could be $4,000 in security deposits, 1,000 for each unit. So that's $4,000 that, the buyer just needs to make sure, it's not the seller's money, it's the tenant's money. So you just want to make sure that it transfers to the buyer, to the new investor, to the new owner, because, then it, can be handed out when, if a tenant moves out. So, and the same with, just rent proration, just, it's really just good to make sure it's in the contract. You don't have that seller or the seller's, attorney or title or whatever, saying, well, it wasn't in the contract, we're not transferring, that type of, cash flow or something. So that's kind of the main thing. But, but really a part of it is also just, all the info on the tenants, should be part of the contract as well.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So, what do investors want to hear? And I kind of mentioned this throughout. It's really just, it says speak their lingo. If you haven't done it or don't do it a lot, I can't just rattle off, even some of these things we're talking about. If I'm working with investor, it's almost like I have a little cheat sheet, like, okay, and you learn it. So okay, now I know what ROI is and COC, you learn some of this stuff, but man, you can get an investor on the phone or in person or whatever, and they're rattling stuff off, and it's like, oh man, that's a lot. So just, when I say speak their lingo, kind of obviously knowing that it all is money. 100% is bottom line to them. How much am I going to get? How long is it going to take? So even kind of understanding that is really speaking their lingo. And then it's just a matter of from there, learning and helping them decide if this is the right property. What numbers do you need? I'll get you whatever numbers you need, so that they can do their homework. Mention ways to help them save more of their building's money. So, really an advantage to buyers and sellers is the potential for owner financing. So, the seller of the investment property, sometimes, hey, look, we're looking to get out, we're done. I don't want anything, I don't want anything to do with it. I don't want to, I don't want payments for the next 5 years. But some of them actually, maybe even their listing agent didn't even ask them, like, are you just willing to think about owner financing? Well, owner financing for a seller maybe allows them to spread the potential capital gains from the sale over years, because it doesn't transfer right away. There's different ways to do it. So in the buyer maybe can't go to the bank and get $100,000, but they have enough down, they have, they can make the payment. So just different ways for you to help them think creatively. Sometimes I'll say something to an investor, like, man, I never thought of that. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, like, that's great. I kind of take it, but, just think of anything that potentially could help, lowering an assessment if that's the case. Well, maybe their taxes go down. So just, different ways to, maybe, a property manager, that is cheaper than others, but does a great job, so it saves them money. So anytime you can sort of think, along what they're thinking, bottom line money, saving them some is a big piece. So, just some other things, cost segregation study, 1031 exchange. So, 1031 exchange, hey, I can own a 2-family. Maybe I've been, did some good investment. I'm going to have $100,000 in capital gains when I sell it. Well, 1031 exchange is simply, hey, I can sell this and I can buy another 2-unit and not pay the capital gains. It just, there's a time frame, but, you're able to help them sell a property, buy another property in a certain time frame, and all that money just rolls over instead of paying capital gains on, any potential sale, because that is the one thing that comes up with investment. You don't pay taxes on your home residence if you've lived there 2 out of 5 years. But when you don't live there and it's strictly an investment, when you go to sell it, if you're selling it for based on all depreciation and things like that over the years, if you're going to gain 50 grand, you're paying capital gains on that 50 grand. So what can we do to kind of lower that or help them not pay capital gains by maybe exchanging it for another property? So that's just that 1031 exchange. And then just, really, I say a great CPA, a good accountant will help, and also an attorney if needed. Do they want to own it themselves? Do they want to, have an LLC or an S corp, things like that? So, I'm not going to have that conversation with them. I'm not a CPA. That's one of our things. I'm not a CPA. I'm not an attorney. So, make sure they're set up best possible by, making sure they're chatting with other professionals to make sure they're taken care of. And last thing here is just curious if you guys have ever heard of a self-directed IRA. So I actually have one myself. I've gotten some other folks interested and on board, and that now they have them. So real quick, what it is you can actually, let's say you have 50 grand that you have accessible. You have an old IRA somewhere, you have an old 401k that you left work, you have 50 grand sitting somewhere, and you're just able to move it. You can transfer it to a to another. You can go from Fidelity to Merrill Lynch type thought process. Well, what a self-directed IRA is you can put that 50 grand into a self-directed IRA, and you can actually invest that 50 grand in real estate. So the self-directed IRA actually purchases the real estate. The deed for that property goes into it's literally sitting in the self-directed IRA. All of, so let's say we buy a 2-family, it costs 50 grand. I'm not sure where we're getting a 2-family for 50 grand, but costs 50 grand. That's how much you have. So the IRA buys the property. There's a deed sitting in your IRA, so there's $0, but there's a deed for 123 Main Street. When you get rent, it goes into the IRA. When you pay a bill, it comes out of the IRA. You own it for 10 years. At the end, let's say you've made 20 grand over 10 years with the every month you made $300 or $400, whatever it is. So now you have a deed for the 123 Main Street. You have 20 grand, and you go and you bought it for 50, and you go and sell that for 100. So what did I say? Buy it for 50, sell it for 100. There's 50 grand there that you're going to pay capital gains on. Well, what happens is the IRA sells the property. All 100 grand comes back into the IRA. And now you have 120 grand in your IRA, and you have 0 tax liability. So it's really cool. I will, you know what, let me, this is just so you guys know, this is where I have, let's see if I can find my, this is where I have my, and there are other places now, but this is where I have my self-directed IRA. It's a company called Equity Trust. I don't even know how much money they have now. When I moved it over here, it was new to me. So I'm like, all right, what is this company? I don't know. They had like 90 billion in assets. I'm like, oh, okay. So you're not just a small little thing. So again, if you just want to check it out, but the idea is, think of an investor that, I know you have a friend that has an IRA somewhere that, has talked like, I want to own real estate one day. Like, hey, take your 100 grand in your 401k from a work job you left, or wherever your money is, put it in self-directed IRA, and you can buy real estate with it. And the idea is no capital gains, because when that 120 grand comes back into your IRA, it's going to sit there. So you're going to pay taxes on it, but you're going to pay taxes on it when you withdraw that money at age 70 or whatever. So just wanted to throw it out there that it's such an awesome way to for folks to get into investment real estate that may not be able to get a mortgage, might not have 100 grand sitting around, but guess what, they have 100 cash sitting around. It's just in their 401k. So they do have the ability, this can be a down payment and then still finance it. I mean, there's so many options here, but I just wanted to bring it up and make sure you guys know. Just Google it, look up Equity Trust, but self-directed IRA. More folks are learning about it now, but when I talk to 7 out of 10 people and they have never ever heard of it, they're like, what is going on? What's the catch? They're always they're just imagining what I'm telling them and how much trouble they could get, but it's 100% legal. Is nothing, I mean, these are corporations doing this. I believe Fidelity right now might do it. I'm not 100% sure. So, it's not a catch. It's not a loophole. It's just called a self-directed IRA.
Hey, Wayne.
Yes.
Okay, so back when you were explaining like the example of it. I got, okay, you sell for 100 grand. There was 50,000 you'd pay capital gains on. Can you
Yeah,
go
so
through
yeah, so
after
the
that?
idea is you know, if I just go out right now and buy a property for 50 grand,
Yep.
finance it, cash, whatever. Like if I
Mhm.
sell it tomorrow for 100,
Yep.
it's a 50 grand, you know, I made 50 grand and I am going to pay capital gains on that. And capital
Right.
gains are, if you know, just so you guys know, are just, you know, it's tax, but it's at a higher tax rate, you know, and I can't get around it, you know, that, so I'm gonna, you know, I'm gonna probably lose, you know, 25 to 30% of that 50 just for capital gains tax. So, you
Okay.
know, so I really only made, let's say I made 30, you know. Well, in this case, if I, you know, use the self-directed IRA, I bought it for 50. My self-directed IRA bought it. If I
Yep.
sell it for, you know, 100 tomorrow, my
Yep.
IRA is going to sell it, and that 100 grand goes into the self-directed IRA, and I pay zero tax on it. And now I have 100 grand to invest, buy another property, and I can, you know, ideally you go from the 50 to 100. You know, maybe you know, with some owner financing, you can buy two properties. But the idea is, you know, the deed goes into the IRA, the expenses are paid out, the money comes in, and it's all just through the IRA, and all of it is tax free because it's staying in the IRA. And the idea is you will be taxed on it, but it's, you know, you know, just like any investment, when you take it at 70, you know, you're not working, your tax rate will be lower. So, you know, so that's the idea. You know, is,
Okay.
you know, when you, but the idea is you know, if you're using a self-directed array, you will not pay capital gains because, you know, all that money went right into the investment, and you know, you didn't physically get it, you know, and have to pay tax on it.
Okay.
So it's kind of, if you've never heard of it, you know, you know, it's like, what? You know, but I'm happy to chat with you anymore about it. But the idea is, um, you know, just Google it and read on it. This Equity Trust has a great, I mean, you'll see there's a guide right there, but they also have some, I don't know if they're videos or articles, you know, that really explain, you know, kind of how I just did it in 10 minutes. But you know, it's my favorite thing. I've bought property and sold it. Right now I don't own anything in it. It's just, it's sitting there, but I'm always on the lookout because I kind of know that I have some cash, literally considered cash. Like when I bought my property, it was a cash deal because, you know, because I knew the IRA was buying it, and it's, you know, they can close in 30, you know, whatever time frame that a cash deal can close in. But it's actually considered a cash deal. Of course, if you're paying, you know, if it's a 50 grand property and you got 50 grand in your IRA, it's cash. So it's really neat, you know, neat thought process, and really a solid idea. You know, really when I think of, hey, who, you know, who are the investors? Where do I find them? When I'm talking to my friends and family, and you know, just folks that are just normal folks, and if they mention, you know, hey, I'd like to get into investment. Hey, do you have access to, you know, to a 401k? Do you have access to an IRA money? You know, because that could potentially work for them to get into investment. So that is the session for today. Hopefully it was helpful. I know it's kind of a lot, but you know, again, you know, just I'll send you the slides, Ashley, and you can share them, or you know, I don't know if I
Perfect. Please do.
yeah, I'll do that because it's kind of nice to have, maybe if you're going to rewatch this, or just kind of think about some of those terms. But don't hesitate. You know, I'm sure there's probably some folks in your office, you know, that have invested, and so having a conversation with an investor. But you know, Google's pretty good if you know, kind of, you know, what is ROI, what is, you know, and then, you know, they'll kind of do some calculations for you. So you know, so if you're kind of looking to learn a little bit more, either chat with someone, or certainly, you know, Googling can help, you know, with some of that terminology and things.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you guys, and hope everything's good there with the fires and stuff. It's always scary. So,
It is. Yeah, they've evacuated some rural areas on the outside of town, and I don't
wow.
know, has it actually hit any,
You got some outbuildings like in the Rabbit Hills, like.
but no homes or anything
Oh.
yet, so. It's kind of intense. We haven't, I don't know that we've ever dealt with something like this close to town before, but it's surprisingly not very smoky outside. I feel like, yeah, but will the firefighters are working hard, so
Yeah, well, stay safe, everyone, and
thank you.
yeah, you're welcome. I'll post the recording on the YouTube channel and then send you the slides. And as always, if anybody has any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out.
Excellent. All right, thanks.
All right, take care, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.